talks this evening. And our first one is going to be David Poplin. So David studied biochemistry locally at Eureka California Humboldt and has a passion for psychoactive plants, fungi, compounds. The better we understand these compounds, the more we will be able to use them for medicinal and spiritual purposes, as our ancestors did. David will be talking about a recent Mexico mushroom hunting trip where multiple different psilocybin mushroom species were identified and observed. This presentation is in hopes to inspire people to get out there and contribute to this wonderful psychedelic revolution. So proud to be
Alright, so today I'm going to take you guys on a journey to Mexico. Did everyone take their microdoses? They're giving out free microdoses over there. Kayla's an awesome, fantastic mycologist, and definitely check those out. And yeah, so Danielle kind of already did the introduction. I study biochemistry, and I've just always been interested in plants and fungi. I did about a decade up here in cannabis. Just any extract that you can name in cannabis, I've probably tried or attempted to make. And a lot of this it's awesome because now a lot of cannabis people are moving to fungi, and there's so much work to be done. So it's amazing that there's just so many people that are willing to cross the paths, because it's the same, sometimes it's the same thing. If you're cultivating mushrooms, and you're a farmer in a sense. So you're just farming another organism that we want to make sure that's farmed correctly. So yeah, today, in September, I met up with, there is a Entheogenic foundation that started about last year, and it's a collective of a bunch of different mycologists from the United States, and mostly United States, and they meet up here in Veracruz, Mexico, and they will kind of all go out and mushroom hunt and find these different species, and we have DNA barcoding equipment there, so we are doing DNA barcoding. Myself, I did not participate in that part. I literally just showed up for the mushroom hunting part to find specific mushrooms and just dive kind of deep into that. We found 5 different psilocybin-containing mushrooms and 2 different species of cordyceps. So Veracruz, Mexico. It's known for its coffee, its tropical fruits, and wine. It's a beautiful spot, and it's called it's surrounded by a bunch of different volcanoes, and these volcanoes produce really great environments for these mushrooms to grow in. That's like the perfect habitat for these mushrooms. The place of 4 mountains is what it's called as well. The 14,000 feet above sea level causes like I said, a perfect environment for these mushrooms. It's always raining, it's always wet, creating a great environment. We all know that mushrooms like rain. I'm sure a lot of you mushroom hunt here. We're in a great spot too for that. Average precipitation is about 14 to 16 inches, so lots of rain. Here's just a couple photos of the scenery. So I took this photo at like sunrise. It was probably at like 5:30 in the morning. Usually you couldn't even see, like this is the top of the volcano. And usually you can't see this because there's just clouds of water in a sense. There's these beautiful waterfalls, and sometimes some of the paths are, you're walking along the waterfall, like it gets all slippery and crazy. It's so fun. It's like exhilarating. The first mushroom we found, or I want to talk about, is psilocybin zapaticorum. So this mushroom is, I put here's where they're usually found, or location-wise. So mostly South America, but in Mexico they are found as well. It's named after the Zapotec Indians and was scientifically described around 1957. And I'll speak more about who is doing all that work and finding these species. These are really cool mushrooms, and they are found usually along cliff sides or disturbed areas like rocks, rivers, and creeks. Like there is a couple of times where we would see really beautiful patches and just be like, yeah, we're not going to go and try and get those, because they're just like, it's like a huge waterfall just on the other side. So you're like, is that patch really worth it? They're usually found around 932 meters. And this mushroom is very interesting because of the concentration. So one of my good friends, another colleague of mine at Humboldt State, he just released a paper on psilocybin zapaticorum. And it's, I believe, one of the first papers that speak about cultivation and just the history of this zapaticorum. It's like a 40-long, I put the link down here I think if you just Google cultivation of zapaticorum, it should pop up. But if you have any questions, I have my card over there, and I can send you the link to this paper. And it's a fantastic paper, and it just got dropped. And it just talks about how crazy this mushroom is. And one species that they tested of it had about 22 milligrams per gram of tryptamines, which is pretty high. So like the normal, let's say, psilocybin cubensis that were legally allowed to grow here. So, is it legal, I guess?
It's
Decriminalized?
Decriminalize.
Well, yeah. And so usually the ones that were allowed to grow here now, and I hope you guys are still growing it before the laws and stuff. But, usually it's like 8 milligrams per gram. So these mushrooms are potentially 3 times stronger than some of the ones that we're cultivating right now. Not to mention that, you know, I did say that they're named after the Zapotec Indians. So these are very spiritual mushrooms, and there's a lot of reports of this mushroom, this specific mushroom, being used in ceremonies. So the psilocybin molecula. So this one's cool too, and I like how the Q, or like the nickname, is like Little Woman, and it's like, look at these mushrooms. They're like very tiny, and these are all photos that I took personally just with an iPhone. Yeah, so these mushrooms are really cool because they're just like, they're so dense and small. Same thing, usually found around landslide areas, around 2,600 to 32,000 meters. I actually have, so Caleb over there, I brought back spore prints of all these, and me and Caleb over there are trying to cultivate these and see if we can do it. Not many people have successfully cultivated these, so it is awesome that now, and then not to mention we also have that in our bank now. So now we have these genetics that I went and found in Mexico. And right here we actually have, this mushroom, I brought back the spores, and Caleb over there put it on a agar plate. So that's the mycelium of this mushroom now. This is the beginning step, in a sense, of being able to cultivate this mushroom and hopefully be able to dose you guys with it.
Does anything in nature consume these naturally?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too, is it's very interesting of like, why is psilocybin even there? And there's, you know, reports of insects that are potentially getting high on this stuff. And that's the natural, like I believe that there's like natural occurrences of why these mushrooms are creating psilocybin containing, or psilocybin or other tryptamines, and making these bugs and insects kind of like maybe repel against it. It's a defense mechanism. Yeah, so that one's really cool. That one, honestly, we don't have much. Like I said, there's so much work to be done because we don't even really know how strong these are yet, how to cultivate them. I believe there's only like 1 or 2 other people that I know that have tried and maybe got like small yields when they did it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we can manipulate and mimic the environment that these mushrooms love. So psilocybe subtropicalis. So same thing, I have, you can pass this one around too. Here's the mycelium of this mushroom. Same thing, just brought back the spores. I believe this is actually from like, this mushroom right here was all spored out. So this one was like filled with spores. So essentially we put it on a piece of tin foil, let the spores drop on the tin foil. It's funny, Alan Rockefeller taught me this trick where he was telling me how to kind of write different species names on there just in case if you get in trouble through customs. So I mean, can't remember what we wrote, but this mushroom was, what's trippy about it, and it's literally trippy, but it was only scientifically talked about in 1995. So that's not that long for this mushroom. And just think about how many are out there that we don't really know about and haven't even been found. So it is awesome that there's people like Alan Rockefeller that will be he goes all over the place, and he's just like a fucking mushroom taxonomy bank in his brain. It's crazy. And he's really nice, so he's a great guy to reach out to if you find any mushrooms. He's like so active on iNaturalist, and he's like sitting there, I feel like with his phone in his hand, waiting for questions. The guy who found this, so the Guzman, he has identified over 200 different species, and we owe a lot of respect to him because he, through the 50s, I think he passed away in 2016, but from the 50s up until then, he's just been a pioneer on identifying and describing the psilocybin-containing mushrooms. The psilocybin mexicana, this one was really cool too. I really like the bell-shaped kind of form in that one. The Aztecs used to call this one the god of mushrooms. Yeah, these ones are found a little bit lower in elevation compared to the last mushrooms that we were talking about. So it's cool to be, you're walking up these volcanoes in a sense. Some of them are still active, I think, maybe. But anyway, you're like walking up these volcanoes and you're finding these different species of psilocybin-containing mushrooms at different elevations, at different spots. So it's really amazing that you're going on a mushroom hike, and if you know what you're looking for, you're going to find some really cool stuff. It's also found in Costa Rica and Guatemala as well. The Neohalopensis, so this one's not really well described yet. We don't even really know the concentrations on some of these. Right now we have this, like I said, we have the spore prints, we brought them back. We are going to try and cultivate them and do more research on them. This one is very interesting because they had such a really long, almost like root system. So the longest one we found was this long. Just same kind of size cap, but just that stem was you were just kept pulling it out of the ground. It was what the heck? Never seen anything like it before. Yeah, what's very interesting too is I was there for about a week, and it was hard to eat them all. So I tried eating as much as I can without and still being coherent and wanting to hike. And another funny story is there's these bugs called chiggers. And the first day I was walking around, shirt off, no shoes. Oh my god, it's so bad. So the whole time I was walking around with swollen feet. These bug bites they dig into your feet and your skin and I don't know what the hell they're doing, but so bad. So the whole time I'm hiking with swollen feet. The only thing that would distract me from pain was eating psilocybin.
Not sure.
The Zapaticorum. Yeah. It's and what we're finding out too is with a lot of these different mushrooms have different tryptamine contents. And it's making it, I'm realizing how much of a high and a feeling it is, which is very important. So now, once we get more people to try this and grow it and have more accessibility to it, then we can start finding out these tryptamine concentrations and figure out almost like which is going to work best for you. Because let's say, like, for a good example would be like psilocybin cubensis. That's like most of what us cultivators grow here. It's just very much what's like domesticated. There's so many different strains out right now, and it's crazy how it's same with cannabis right now. We find I have friends that run psilocybin analytical labs, and they're telling me, they're like, I just spoke with one today. He was like, dude, we just keep finding these strong mushrooms. They found they tested a zapatacorin and a paniola cyanescin that tested at 50 milligrams per gram. So that's like 5-6 times the strength of like most of these cubensis that we're growing. So it's really cool to like see how it's developing into this, like, I say it's like cannabis because now we have like 45% THC strains. It's the same thing happening with this. But the difference is, I feel like each one of these mushrooms have different tryptamine components in there. And when I say tryptamine, for example, I could say psilocybin or psilocin. Those are two tryptamines that are very important, and they have different effects on our bodies biochemically speaking. And the different concentrations, in my beliefs, like this is what we're still kind of researching, causes different highs and medicinal effects. So from my experience, eating a zapatacorin was, it's such a clean medicine. I didn't have any of like the stomach stuff that you usually get with cubensis. I didn't have the anxiety of the come up in a sense, because sometimes it's like, oh shit, here we go. It's like with these like natural containing or natural growing mushrooms, I haven't been getting that. So that one's huge to me, where it's like, oh wait, now I'm not scared to eat them. I don't have to worry. Yeah.
I'm curious when you're saying they test, they're testing, like, is there manipulation of the strength? Or is it people just throwing on and propagating it?
Both. So it's like you're farming or growing for genetic, phenotypes that have these strong or potent materials, and then you cross that with something else that's potent.
So what's your thought on that?
It's getting wild. But it's cool. There's a lot of like science that still needs to be done. And I don't know, when people ask me like which strain to grow or like is it potent, it's like it depends who you ask. Because like I'm a fucking little guy. I eat like one little mushroom and I'm high, you know? Like it doesn't take much to mess me up in a sense, or for me to get like anxiety or something from like eating too much. It's like a gram of psilocybin and I'm like, or like psilocybin mushrooms, and I'm like, I wouldn't be talking to you guys. I'd like want to be hiking somewhere or like. Yeah, and I thought I would just, so those are like pretty much the 5 different psilocybin containing mushrooms. I wanted to bring up the ones, there's a couple here, so like we just got rain, so definitely get out there and try and find the cyanescins. And same thing, like those are fantastic feeling. They're just so much different than like a lot of the cubensis that we grow and focus on. And they're natural. It's like you can go and find your own medicine. I think I've found it at least a quarter pound, so like 4 ounces dried of cyanescins so far this season. And I feel like we just started, so they're out there.
Those are the ones with the dunes?
Yeah, those are the ones in the dunes. Yeah, but definitely like be careful, because there is very poisonous lookalikes called gallerinas. So, like I said, there's people out there like Alan Rockefeller waiting to fucking get this question asked. But yeah, so moving on, here's just a couple cool cordyceps species that we found. We took samples of them and we are getting them barcoded and trying to figure out what the hell they are, if they're medicinal or if not, if they've been described or maybe they haven't, who knows yet. But it's cool, you can see it actually growing like on the cricket. It's like the cricket's body down here. And this is the same mushroom under UV light, so this is it fluorescing, which is pretty wild. And it's like, that's another question, is like, why are these mushrooms fluorescing? Is there a biological reason that these mushrooms are capable of doing this? Most likely, I'd say yes. Here's another one that we found, growing out of like a caterpillar. You can just straight up see the caterpillar's body and like some devil horns coming out. But it's amazing because like we all have heard of cordyceps, right? Like now this isn't like it started as a natural, containing mushroom that has these potential health benefits, and then now it's moved more towards indoor cultivation. So I was just invited to a 3-day cordyceps cultivation course in Calistoga 2 weekends ago, ran by William Padilla-Brown, a fantastic entrepreneur, mycologist. He inspires me to do some of the stuff that I do. So it was really cool to see him teach this course on domesticating and growing these cordyceps indoors. I think a pound of cordyceps might still be going for like $500 to $800 a pound. So it's like, in a sense, there's a market out there for all of us to be growing these medicines and being able to just provide it for our, not just for money, but to have it for our friends and family. So it's an honor to be able to like learn and potentially teach and do it ourselves in growing these like medicinal cordyceps. So here's a picture of the spore print. See how it's all scraped up? That's literally what I took to put on these plates. And this is me working with the genetics in front of the flow hood. So this is what it takes. I literally brought the spores back in these brown bags and mislabeled them just in case so I don't get in trouble. Oh yeah, see, what the hell did he put? Alan Rockefeller put Sambarella? Mexica? I don't know. But yeah, here's, I brought a fresh fruit back too. And we had one of the Airbnbs had a dehydrator, so we were able to dehydrate the samples and make sure that we brought them back dry and they didn't like mold up or anything. And what you're doing is it only takes 2 spores to germinate and grow some mycelium. The mycelium is the root system that's essentially going to spread out and try and get food to produce these mushrooms. And the fruiting bodies are really interesting because they only last, like in nature, it's like mushrooms only going to last like 4 to 5 days, potentially, like depending on the environment or around it. So the life cycle of the fruiting body is a very small portion of the mushroom. So the mycelium is really like the genetic bank. That's where all the good stuff is. So if you haven't seen those plates, I think they're getting passed around. That's the spore. 2 spores liked each other, and they made a baby of mycelium, and that's what's on those plates. And that's the next step. So the next step, we'll be putting this mycelium onto grains, which is another food source for the mycelium. And then once we get the myceliated grains going of these species, we will essentially put them in soil. There's a bunch of different kinds or methods that we can do, but it's mostly just like cocoa cord, which is like a cheap soil you can get at the Beneficial Living Center. It's a coconut cord, like shavings.
What's the halakha one?
That's the Mexicana. Yeah. So why is it important? Why do we even care about these like psilocybin-containing mushrooms? Like I said, all these mushrooms are going to have different components and different concentrations of these tryptamines, causing, who knows, different medicinal benefits. And everybody's different, so it's like this is going to be cool to understand these compounds and figure out what people like and which mushrooms to use for medicinal purposes, from depression to PTSD. and other things, all of the above. There's so much work to do. Like I said, it's pretty cool to start seeing some of these cannabis people trying to go into the mushroom world, although some of them are doing it for money and thinking that this is going to be their next cash crop. And it sucks. I wish it was. And I've already seen multiple people attempt and throw a bunch of money and space into trying to cultivate a lot of psilocybin-containing mushrooms, and they failed, sadly. So yeah, there's just so much work to do, and so many different citizen scientists that are just popping up. And like that William Padilla Brown, he's a citizen scientist, so he has no formal education, but he has taught, I'd say, thousands and thousands of people by now on how to cultivate, which mushrooms to cultivate, the culture around it, just cool things like that, where it's like, I don't know, it's just I can't push it more that there's just so much work to do, and being a citizen scientist is sometimes the best way to go, because you have your own resources, your own lab, and just surrounding yourself by people that are interested in doing the same thing as you. Yeah, deforestation, as we know, is happening at a very fast rate. So we need to create these banks. We need to have these spores and these genetics cataloged before they disappear. And to me, like, it's so nice to know that, you know, I have these 5, and then I have friends who have others that they found that they're doing the same things with. So we're all kind of creating this like collective environment where we're all sharing genetics and information, and just teaming up to make sure that, you know, we could find and identify these mushrooms. How am I on time? Pretty good. All right. So I was gonna do like a just mushroom quiz. Let's try and let's have some fun or something. So mushrooms, are they more related to humans or plants?
Humans.
Why is that?
They're on that planet. They were across the evolutionary chain, and then you became part of them.
Well, Matt, you're getting deep in there. But it's because they breathe in CO2 and expel oxygen. Same as us. Or opposite.
Yeah.
We breathe in oxygen. That's photosynthesis. Someone said we breathe in nitrous? I'm a retired book. So next question. What is the active compound in mushrooms responsible for the trippy effect? No one? You know this. What is the active compound in mushrooms responsible for the trippy effect, or psychoactive effect? Psilocybin, yes, that is one of them. What is the root system of mushrooms called? Mycelium. No, it's too easy. No prizes for that one. Okay, this one's interesting. So name 3 different tryptamines in mushrooms.
Cytosine. 4-HOMET.
Anyone? No. That is one, I think. Basically what I was trying to get at is, now I put these here. So there's psilocybin right here. This compound right here is psilocybin, and then this compound is psilocin. And there's a bunch of precursors before that as well, where it's just changing at a functional group. So what happens with psilocybin to psilocin in our stomachs from the stomach acid is this phosphoric acid pops off with a phosphatase, I believe, is the enzyme. And it turns into psilocin, which is the active compound. This is what's done in our stomachs. This is what happens when you're trying the lemon tech. And there is, like I said, so to answer that question, baeocystin would be one. So baeocystin and norbaeocystin are precursors to psilocybin. So they're the same thing. All that would really be changing is adding hydrogens right here. And they become precursors, so these different tryptamines. And it's when we are testing for this, it shows us that like, oh, okay, if it's high in psilocybin, then it'll be high, it potentially can be high in psilocin, and vice versa. So like another cool fact about that is the bluing of mushrooms. So we think mushrooms, when we see them bluing, it's a polymerization reaction, psilocybin dephosphorylating into psilocin, and what's crazy about it is it doesn't really mean that it's more potent if the mushrooms are blue. If the mushrooms are super blue, that means that they went through this polymerization reaction and are honestly too big of compounds now for our receptors. So they become long chains of this like just bluing, and it becomes too big, like I said, for our receptors, and it's almost like null, I would say, or like non-potent anymore.
Does that mean water extraction is it gives a weaker effect for the amount of mushrooms extracted in the water?
What, like the blue water?
Yeah. So is the blue water weaker than the lemon tag?
I'd say so, yes.
Okay.
Well, it depends, because I mean, it depends.
Same mushroom, same everything, same
Yeah.
volume, but just does the water extraction, does that create the polymerization, or is it just a byproduct changing the color of the water to blue?
I think off the top of my head, I'd say that it's still extracting the psilocybin, but the bluing is just showing that the polymerization reaction is occurring, and potentially meaning that it's the degradation form of the psilocin that might not be able to be uptaken in our bodies, pretty much, our brain or whatever. I guess I kind of already answered that last one. What two species of fungi have proven health benefits?
Cordyceps.
Nice. That's a good one. Heard it's good for libido. Yeah, so that one, and I guess like reishi or lion's mane is all I was kind of getting at. I think that's all the time I have. Yeah, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Danielle, for putting this on.
David did so much when we were decriminalizing Arcata back in 2021. He was the first person that started helping me table. I was like tabling, I was sick, I was like, if no one helps me, I'm done. I can't do this by myself. And David walks up and is like, hey, how can I help? So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so thank you, David. So our next presenter, oh, and if you want to support David, he has some t-shirts over there, and a reminder about the free microdoses, awesome honey, and chocolates, and yeah, and of course, a donation in the very front for Decriminalize Nature Humboldt. We are planning on going for a big county, perhaps in the summer. We will see how energy levels are. It's a lot. It takes a lot. Okay, so our next presenter is Marissa Celeste. So Marissa began her journey with entheogenic medicines 25 years ago. Because of her interests, she was nominated to be an employee of MAPS, a multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies. During her time there, she was invited to a Santo Daime ceremony. She received healing and became an ambassador of the brew ayahuasca. Helping many people, she coordinated events for cultural exchange. For the last 5 years, she has been working with the Huni tribe in Brazil, and will be joining them in the Amazon jungle in 2024 for their annual festival, where the tribes gather together with Westerners to celebrate cultural exchange. She now studies the language and is learning their traditional sacred chant. So let's welcome Marissa.
everyone. Houch, houch. Houch, houch is a greeting, a thank you, a goodbye, and many other meanings in Hachakunin. Thank you all for showing up and standing up for our sacred plant medicines. I was wondering what I should call myself for this lecture, and during a sacred ceremony with the Honeycomb tribe 2 weeks ago, I was told to call myself an ambassador. With respect, I am introducing myself as Marissa Celeste, ambassador of plant medicine. Growing up, I was always deeply connected to spirit. I'm not sure why, my parents are atheists, but it was different for me. I was always searching. I grew up Unitarian Universalist. We had family friends that we went with. And through that congregation, I experienced rituals from Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Wicca, nature-based spirituality, Shintoism. As I grew up, I dove into New Age, Christian mysticism, and Sufism. I was strongly influenced by the movie Meetings with Remarkable Men, the story of Guru Rajev and his spiritual quest. I realized the way to enlightenment was through experience, personal experience. When I was around 20 years old, over 25 years ago, I started experimenting with cannabis, LSD, psilocybin, and MDMA. Of course, this brought me in contact with more people and more ideas. Through my new psychedelic community, I was introduced to the spoken word of Terence McKenna. His knowledge brought me the understanding that these were not just substances to experiment with, but tools and keys to experience the state of being that I was seeking spiritually. Through his words, I came to understand entheogenics as portals to self-discovery and healing. I became passionate about the importance of respecting psychedelics. I realized quickly that they were tools to gain knowledge about oneself and the world around us, but it was important to have the right intentions, be in the right setting, and to have the right company. I regularly took large doses of psilocybin and would sit for the evening meditating and practicing pranayama and body scanning. Seeing the strong effect it had on others, I began a learning about holding space and how to support people's experience during the journey. My passion for entheogenic medicine and holding space for others during their journey was noted by a friend who was attending New College of Florida in Sarasota. She decided to move forward from her position at MAPS and nominated me to take her place. I was interviewed by each employee as well as Rick Doblin. They voted to bring me onto the team as membership and sales coordinator. My job was to mail the books MAPS published to those that purchased them and to keep the memberships current and the database up to date. Additionally, I gave tours of the MAPS house to members and helped take care of the psychedelic garden where we had numerous psychedelic plants, including Banisteriopsis capivine and Cytropia viridis, the 2 ingredients to the magical brew ayahuasca. Through the few years I worked at MAPS, I was blessed to be invited to some really stellar events, such as the first Grateful Dead gathering after Jerry passed, and to a Santo Daime ceremony. I didn't exactly know what we would be doing during the Santo Daime ceremony, but I decided to learn not too much before so that I could go in with a clear mind and no expectations. Leading up to the ceremony, I had been sick for a few months with walking pneumonia and ear, nose, and throat infections. I heard that the tea we would be drinking could help me, as antibiotics were not working. We were given a special diet to follow starting a week before ceremony. No meat, dairy, heavy oil, fermented foods, refined sugar, and no sexual release. I was nervous but excited. Wearing white to the ceremony, I had a high fever and very little strength. The ceremony was a whirlwind. We drank the sacrament, prayed in Portuguese, sang in Portuguese, and the medicine moved through me. She spoke to me. She used symbolism to create realizations and understanding. She created visions to show me the cleansing of my body, my mind, my spirit. She is intelligent. She gave me a step-by-step list how to heal my illness and exactly what I needed to do to start changing my life. I began changing the way I spoke to people. I changed the way I ate. I changed direction with my interests. During the ceremony, I saw myself shoveling dirt out of the inside of my body. All the hurtful words and old beliefs instilled in me by my father. The medicine spoke to me and very clearly. After that first ceremony, I coordinated Santo Daime ceremonies for the next 10 years. The medicine told me that if I wanted to have a relationship with her, that I needed to choose the date and make it happen. I received so much healing and such clear direction from this benevolent entity. I wanted to continue on my path, going deeper with the medicine and deeper into my psyche to become the most whole version of myself in the lifetime I have been so graciously given. I was grateful for the opportunity to have the medicine in my life, and it was an honor to help many souls meet her through the years. When I started coming to California about 15 years ago, I would do personal retreats with my madrina because I wanted to go even deeper with the medicine and to really focus on my inner work and inner journey. I would fast, journal, do sweat lodge, talk therapy, and other modalities along with drinking the sacred brew. When my brother passed away 10 years ago, I did a Lakota vision quest and later went on retreat with the medicine to work through my feelings and to connect with him on the other side. At times, I was lucky enough to be in retreat with my closest friends and even my sister. I feel truly blessed to have shared the deep healing of the medicine with some of the people I love the most. Through the years, I have seen and experienced such incredible healing. I have witnessed people stopping decade-long addictions, change their diet and exercise habits and return to health, become confident and expressive. I have also seen people have negative reactions during the ceremony. It's not all roses and rainbows. People can feel lost, have traumatic memories from this or other lifetimes. They can try to run away from the ceremony because they are running from some dark thought or fear or shame. They may have an entity attached to them that the medicine brings to the surface to heal. This is why noble guardianship during ceremony, along with integration and support after the ceremony, is of extreme importance. After a string of traumatic events, I took a few years break from all substances. A few years later, I went to Florida to visit friends and enjoy the warm weather. That is when a dear friend introduced me to changa. This changa was DMT sourced from mimosa infused in a smoking blend with the capi vine. The addition of the vine helps the journey last longer. As I sat with my friend in ceremony as her guardian, I was guided to take my own deep journey with this medicine. During the weeks preparing for my ceremony, the medicine gave me instructions to dive into the void as I began my journey. The deep aloneness before the first thought. I also had a question. I wanted to know, why do people hurt each other? I had my two closest friends experience guardians to protect me while I was out of body. One friend told me as I took my third deep inhale, like Terence McKenna suggests, she saw a puff of purple smoke rise from the back of my head, and then I leaned forward onto a pillow in my lap, seated in the lotus position. As I dove into the void, I felt no fear. I felt strong and protected by my friends. I went further and further, and then an indigenous man met me and brought me to a different vantage point of the universe. He told me that there is no good or bad to the universe, and that humans misunderstood this concept. He showed me the waves of the universe and the waves of emotion that go through. He took me to an apartment then, and he showed me a couple fighting. He said there are two kinds of souls that come here to Earth. There are the souls that are in pain, and they come here to express their pain, and that is their healing. And there are souls that come here to witness that pain. Their healing is to move forward, to stay whole despite witnessing and experiencing the pain of others. This was a huge realization for me, and it allowed me to forgive so many people that had caused me pain. As time went on, my guardian started calling me back using lavender water, the soft touch of a feather on my head, gently saying my name, like the handmaiden of Inanna, calling her back with the drum, back to the upper world with gifts of understanding to bring to her community. During the ceremony, the music was picked by a dear friend consisting of the Hunikuan and Yawanawa tribe of the Amazon. It was the first time I had heard their music. Now, years later, I was given confirmation on my story that the Yawanawa also believed that there were two kinds of souls, and that one kind comes here in pain, and we help them heal by witnessing their pain, and that is why the medicine of ayahuasca and their other sacred medicines like sananga and kampu are so important. These plant medicines clean the person, they clean their energetic bodies and their physical bodies. The political and spiritual leader of the Yawanawa tribe, Nishiwaka, was the first of the indigenous in their area to demarcate the traditional lands so that the tribe now owns their land. He was the first and has led the way and guided many other indigenous tribes in the Amazon to demarcate their land. This is important so that the government, logging, or mining companies cannot push them off their ancestral lands. The first contact of Western civilization with the Yawanawa and Hunikuan tribes happened about 80 to 100 years ago. Very few survived. At one point, there were only 1,500 people in the Hunikuan tribe. Their numbers have grown with the demarcation of their lands. I'm not sure about all the tribes, but these two tribes that I've been learning about and with are reaching a resurgence of their culture, their artwork, their graphics, their weaving, their medicine, and their ancestral sacred chants. The people are happy people that work hard and live in joy. Let me get back to the music. The playlist during my Changa ceremony had multiple Hunikuan and Yawanawa songs. Not chants, but the sacred chants turned into guitar music. Instruments were only recently brought to the tribes, maybe in just the past 30 years or so the music is relatively new. A few months later, one of the friends that was guardian at my ceremony was taking a road trip around the Cascade Mountains doing her own inner work with nature, and she had a song from that night's playlist playing over and over. Even after she would change the song, it would come back on. So she looked up the musician and found that he had landed on U.S. soil for the first time ever that day. She called, and within a couple months, we went from listening to their songs on YouTube to seeing them in concert in Oakland, and then for a weekend of cultural exchange and sacred ceremony with them. It was all so surreal. If I didn't believe in synchronicities before that, I do now. That first weekend with the tribe in 2019 was incredible. Incredible isn't even a good word to describe it. We had brought 7 people in our group, my best friends, their families, more friends. 3 of us signed up to go with the group to the Boa Vista village in Acre, Brazil. 2 flights, a bus, 4 days on a boat down the Amazon River to get there. These are the last tribes before the undocumented tribes. Some of my friends in the tribe only speak their traditional language, Hachakuan. And some started learning Portuguese in their 20s and 30s. Unfortunately, COVID stopped our plans, and instead of going to Brazil, we were isolated and wondering what the new normal would look like. After a year, the tribe started traveling again, and I was blessed and privileged enough to attend another cultural exchange with them. During that second encounter with the Hunikuan tribe, I had a very strong message from the medicine that it was working and to secure a spot for one more ceremony before they left. I had the strong visualization of the Page, the one leading the ceremony, sweeping the dirt from my mind and realigning my neural pathways to joy and optimism, reparenting me, helping my mind remember how to vibrate on the original thought, love. The coordinators told me the last ceremony was full. I was disappointed, but I didn't give up. I asked a week before the last ceremony, and there was a spot available. I'm so very grateful I listened to my inner voice. What I experienced during this ceremony was the most life-changing event in my 46 years. Before I go into that, I want to offer some background information about the Hunikuan tribe that I have found myself dedicated to learning from. Hunikuan means true people. The Hunikuan have no written language. Their history, their origin stories, fertility rites, baptism, their knowledge of medicinal plants is all oral, and it is thousands of years old. So old they don't know what some of the words in their traditional songs and chants translate to anymore. The Hunikuan have many ancestral origin stories that explain their traditions and their knowledge of plants and animals. They have stories of the boa, Yubit, the jaguar, Inu. They have stories that take days to tell, describing one by one the plants in the Amazon that they use for healing. Healing a stomach ache from eating different meats, headaches for different reasons, plants for fertility and birth control. I've been so lucky to have found a teacher that works through Zoom. He tells us traditional stories where the enchanted beings teach them the sacred chants, teach the people to be fully present in their bodies and to walk upright, teach them how to make the medicine from the sacred vine. Each story is hours long like a drama. It has ups and downs, beauty and fear. In their stories, the animals and birds are sacred. They teach the people how to weave, in which plants the cloth is dyed in which plants dye the cloth different colors. I can't share too many details as these stories are not mine to share. But if anyone wants to learn, please get in touch with me after the event or take a flyer from the table with my contact info and I will refer you. Right now, my young teacher, Yubet, is not only sharing his cultural stories, he is teaching us the sacred vine chants. The sounds of Hachakuan may sound simple at first, but they are multidimensional in vibration and in meaning. Similar to Sanskrit, the vibrations of the words are just as important as their intellectual meaning. The tribe has chants and songs for different rituals. There are the fertility rituals, the baptism of the children, otherwise known in other cultures as coming of age. They have planting songs and harvesting songs. The chants that I've been drawn to are the sacred chants of the Nishipao, the sacred vine songs. When you start to learn the songs and are baptized with the Humpaya ceremony or chili pepper ceremony, you are considered a Chana. Chana is a bird in the Amazon that can copy all the other bird songs. So taking Chana studies is to learn and practice the sacred Nishipao songs. I received the Humpaya ceremony last year. It included having my tongue painted with a special brown chili pepper paste and being chanted and prayed over by the Page, and then performing a song to the group to open up my voice. The Humpaya ceremony helps us learn new languages, speak from the heart, and to learn to sing. The Page that I sit with in ceremony is a Chana. He knows over 70 Nishipai chants and can chant for hours on end without repeating. He has an unbroken lineage with both grandfathers living into their hundreds, both holders of ancient Nishipao songs, and also the last of the Mukaya healers. Unbroken lineage, that means Through thousands of years, these families have passed on the ancient chants from elder to youth. It means that these people, despite contact with Westerners, survived, as did their ancient knowledge, so that now, in this day and time, the same chants are being sung as their ancestors. This in itself is a miracle. The chants for the Nishipao are called the Hunimuka, the true vine chants. There are 3 subsets of these. The chants call the force of the Nishipao, the enchanted beings and birds. They call for good thoughts and to receive light in the mind and joy, and to bring colors to the visions. So my inner guide told me to attend one more ceremony, but didn't give me reason, just told me there was something there for me. On the second night of their cultural exchange with the Page Shana and his female partner, who brings a divine force from the jungle, I drank the first cup of Nishipao. The chants moved through my mind and heart, vibrations healing me, aligning my chakras and energetic body. I drank the second cup of Nishipao, and as the chants moved through me, the medicine showed me a vision. Maybe it was the words of the chants telling the medicine what to do. Maybe the medicine knew what to show me. I won't pretend to understand how the medicine works or how the intelligence of our creator, Kushipa and Hachakuin, works, but the vision came to me. The medicine showed herself as a liquid, separated and going into each one of the cells of my body. She showed herself enveloping every trauma held in each and every cell of my body. My cells visually conscious as she pulled herself together, pulling all the trauma I had experienced in my life that was stuck. I saw her pull herself back together in my stomach. And at that moment I felt the strongest purged, pulled my bucket up to my face and released the medicine holding all the traumas. I looked at it and it was a dark gelatinous disc. It was not water, not undigested food, but a black, slimy disc. I put the bucket to the side and lay down, and the medicine came to me as a woman, glowing in white and yellow, and she asked me, "Now that the trauma is gone, who are you?" Stunned, I felt around inside myself, and I realized I didn't know who I was without the trauma. She took my hand and said, "I will show you." Together we dove down into my body. We dove down and further down, and we kept going till she brought me to my eternal soul. She said, this is who you are." I took a huge breath of air, and I cried out to mourn the sad life I had been leading. And as I inhaled, my whole body filled up with my eternal soul. Then a guardian of the ceremony came to me and asked me if I wanted Olympia, a cleansing, and she lightly hit me with bundled mint plants and blew a feather over my head, shoulders, and heart. Since then, I have been reborn into a new life. Untreatable anxiety, depression, CPTSD that plagued me for years has lifted, and I've been given tools to work with those types of emotions when they do appear now and then. They no longer stay and sit with me. My inner self is strong and can again and again bring my mind back to center. After a lifetime of dysregulation, I am the most emotionally regulated I have ever been, and I am now dedicated to learning the sacred chants of the Hunikuin, and I am dedicated to helping the tribes in the ways that I can, like speaking about them to our community, standing up for the decriminalization of the sacred Nishipao, helping raise funds for their village, and to sit in ceremony with them when the opportunity arises. It is so important, in my opinion, to experience the traditional chants and ceremonies of the tribes who brought us the medicine, ayahuasca. Without these tribes, we would not have this sacred medicine that has healed so many. It is absolutely important to keep the traditions alive. We can do this by supporting tribes by buying their artwork, attending their concerts, by sitting with them in ceremony. The medicine is truly a miracle that is circling the earth now, creating the ripple effect of love and joy. Without the tribes, we would not have this sacred medicine. The medicine and the chants go together. They are symbiotic. They work together to heal the heart, mind, body, spirit. I urge you to get involved in whatever way you can to preserve and protect these Nawa, these people. those that bring healing from this forest with their songs and medicines. It is also important to see how the children of the villages start attending ceremonies and decide themselves when they are ready to try the medicine. It shows that when children are brought up to respect and honor entheogenic plants, there is no overuse or addiction. The parents are there supporting them, and they learn the traditions of their ancestors. Right now, the village of Boa Vista is working with a nonprofit from the States, a dear friend of mine. The nonprofit is establishing solar power so that the people, especially the women and children, can still work on their beadwork, weavings, and their schoolwork at night. The solar power is also incredibly important for clean drinking water for the tribe. The Hunikuan live on the Amazon River. They eat from the river. They drink from the river all year long. In the winter, this is fine. The water is clean and fresh. But during the summer, their monsoon season, the water in the river is full of silt and mud. It's not safe to drink. The solar power wells will help the tribe have clean water all year long. There are also programs I support that help educate the women on dangers being brought in by Western culture. The loggers and miners infiltrating indigenous lands are bringing drugs, crime, and prostitution. And it's important to educate the women so they don't fall into these traps. Lastly, I would like to revisit the importance of integration and support after we attend a ceremony or imbibe an entheogenic plant. When we have a place that we can trust and the visions that come to us or the realizations that we experience with the medicines can be confusing, disorienting, and triggering. When we have a place that we can trust and be vulnerable in, we can talk about these experiences out loud, and sometimes just that helps integrate what may have been too big or too scary or too dark to contemplate alone. Integration gives us someone or a community who can help us see things from a different perspective. The process can sometimes take months or years to fully integrate. There is no time limit on when something from a journey will suddenly make sense or trigger a deeper healing. When we hear others sharing their experience, we can also receive a healing. We are all connected on this planet, and humans share a lot of the same trials, tribulations, joys, and fears. Listening and being present for others can transform our own life. I offer group and private integration services. I'm also a massage therapist and yoga instructor here in town. I offer some really beautiful ways to connect deeper with yourself, like a microdose in yoga practice and microdose in intuitive massage with energy work. If you are interested, you can talk to me or take a flyer from the table. I brought some incredible handicrafts from the women of the Hunikuan tribe of Boa Vista. Each piece is handmade and the graphics are inspired by the visions of the Nishipao. All proceeds go to the tribe. It is an honor for me to help them raise money. After all, they have done the work to receive the directions to make the medicine. They have received and remembered the sacred chants, and now they are joyfully bringing their gifts to help heal the Western world. The tribes have so much love for Westerners, and it brings them happiness when we experience healing with their songs and medicine. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'm honored to be able to share about the Hunikuan and the Yawanawa tribes tonight. These tribes have brought so much joy, delight, and light to my and many other people's lives. If you are at all called to get more information about working with them, please feel free to contact me. Soa alegria, only joy. Haush, haush.
Our next speaker is Taylor. Taylor is a student of life and Zoko Bwiti Iboga provider. After many years exploring natural medicines without lasting success, he met Iboga and was finally able to truly heal and step fully into the crystal. Taylor completed his traditional training, initiation, and rites of passage in the jungle of Gabon with a 10th generation shaman. He has spent the last 2 years studying and working as studying the Iboga medicine in the Bwiti tradition. Following his training, Taylor spent 1 year interning and working at the Root Healing Iboga Retreat Center in Portugal. Taylor is now dedicated to sharing Iboga and the Bwiti traditions with others. So Taylor.
Good evening. Thank you, Danielle, Decriminalize Nature, everybody for being here, speakers. I want to start by sharing a traditional Bwiti greeting when we enter the temple or we enter any work with medicine. We greet the men, we greet the women. So when I say Wakaye, our gentlemen here, please respond, aye. When I say Wenye, our ladies, eh. Wakaye. Aye. Wenye.
E.
Thank you. My name is Taylor, also known as Moupetou in the Bwiti tradition. I am a traditional Bwiti Nganga. This is a traditional Iboga provider, someone who shares the Iboga medicine, who's committed to this path of Bwiti. We say that you can't have Iboga without Bwiti, and you cannot have Bwiti without Iboga. So I want to start by sharing a little bit about Bwiti. The Bwiti tradition is the tradition that has held the Iboga medicine since its discovery thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago by the Babongo people, the Pygmies in Gabon. Bwiti means the study of life itself. To be Bwiti means to be a student of life. And for us, engaged in the Bwiti tradition, this process starts with ourselves. To be Bwiti means we study ourselves. To know life, we have to know ourselves. It's the most important thing. If we don't know ourselves, then we don't know what we want, and we can't get it. So this tradition, working with the medicine, we come to learn these traditional teachings about Bwiti, which are simple truths about life. Simple truths that when you actually apply them in your life become a living roadmap to happiness. That's what everybody on this earth is after. Peace of mind and happiness. That's what we all want. That's what unites us here. We all want to be happy. So our work with the medicine really entails taking a really hard look at ourselves, a really hard look at our life to see what are the things that stand in the way of our unhappiness. What are the things in our life that are taking our joy instead of adding to our joy? There's a lot of misconceptions out there right now about the Iboga medicine. When you look it up on the internet, Wikipedia will tell you that it's a dissociative. This couldn't be further from the truth. Iboga does not dissociate you from yourself. Actually, in leading ceremony with medicine, one of the most common things that I hear from participants is, I don't know that I feel anything at all, I just feel really clear. That's the point. This is not meant to be some high, some trip that you get to go on with pretty colors and fantastical talking beasts. While that might be useful, while important messages might come to you through other medicines, through this means, that is not what the Iboga is all about. Iboga is a journey into yourself. A lot of times people are afraid of the Iboga medicine based on what they've heard or read about on the internet because it sounds so scary, it sounds so intense. I've seen accounts on the internet of people saying it's a 7-day trip through hell. I promise it's not that. The scariest thing about Iboga is looking at you. That's the only thing you have to face with Iboga, with Bwiti. It's an opportunity for us to really look at ourselves. For us to take full responsibility and accountability for our lives. To actually engage with maybe some of the negative experiences or traumas that we've had in a different way so that we can really heal them. Not just put a Band-Aid on them and store them again for later so when the next thing comes up we get triggered again. Actually go to the root to deal with it. Iboga is a root. We take the second layer of the root bark. This is the piece of the medicine that we eat. And in eating the root, this is exactly what the spirit of the medicine wants to do, is take us to the root. The roots of our suffering, The roots of why we feel stuck in life, why we feel like we're not getting ahead, why we feel unhappy, why we feel depressed. The beautiful thing about working with this medicine, what I've come to learn working with my teachers in Africa, is that there is a way through it. I came to the medicine because I had tried everything. Dozens of ceremonies with other plants. Time in the Amazon actually with the Huni Queen and with the Iwanawa. Amazing experiences, but when I walked away from those, personally, I still had questions that I didn't know how to answer. I still felt sick. I still felt really confused. Until I met this amazing, incredible plant, this teacher who is entirely founded on truth. We have a word in Bwiti. You hear it throughout the entire ceremony. When the music is playing, you hear them say, Base. This just means truth. It's the foundation of everything that we do in Bwiti, which really reflects outwards because truth is the entire foundation of life itself. We are here to experience truth. And when we start to distort the truth because of our own experiences, the traumas that we've been through, we shift our perspective on what's happening. And we're not clearly able to see the truth because we don't have the tools. The society that we are living in right now doesn't have a means of interfacing with the soul. Mental health right now, the solution is a pill. There's no discussion of that living, breathing soul inside of us, that breath of life. It's topical treatments for spiritual problems. For us in our tradition, that's how we look at nearly all ailments. Unless you have a physical issue, most everything that we're dealing with actually is a spiritual problem. And we need to go and address the spirit, our soul, to actually be able to deal with these problems, or else they continue to manifest in our lives. They continue to show up again and again. Those are those little nagging things because maybe we feel like we dealt with it, but if our soul is still hurting, there's going to be more. That's one of the most beautiful pieces of this work I find, is so much of it is centered around you having and developing a connection with your soul. That's what so much of this study of life is really about, because that's that piece that unites all of us. We were all given the gift of life by the Creator. And the Creator gave each of us our soul. He gave us something so special. It's a guidance system that we all get to have, that we all get to live with. That inner voice, that little whisper that we get to hear when we manage to shut our minds up for 2 seconds. Our intuition, our third eye, all these are talking about the same. It's the direct channel we have to something bigger. All of us have it. We don't have to buy it. We don't have to practice. It's just there. We just have to learn how to listen. One of the first things that the Bwiti teach in the village to their youth, to the children, is they call it the art of listening. We need to know how to listen in this life. Number one, to each other, to our community, to the people around us, because if we're not really listening, we're not really able to truthfully engage. But more importantly, we need to be able to listen to ourselves. What is our soul saying to us? And it can be simple things. Do I want to go out tonight? Yes or no? We get that guidance every day. No matter what we're doing, we're getting that answer. Unfortunately, for many of us, based on conditioning, programming, how we're brought up, coping mechanisms that we develop, we let our minds get in the way of really listening. So it's one of the big things that we work on when we work with the medicine, when we do a retreat with the medicine, is redefining our relationship with our mind. Because if our mind is screaming and shouting at us, we're not going to get very far. We're not going to be able to really hear that little whisper. It's one of the amazing pieces of work with the medicine is really getting to learn how to take control of our minds. It's possible. We're not our thoughts. They are a part of us. We actually get a choice in how we think and what we're thinking. And this experience with the Iboga is an opportunity to really redefine what that space up here looks like, to quiet it down, to make different choices. come back and spend so many hours and dollars on ceremonies and working, because we know that it's possible to move beyond that. It's not to say that things aren't going to come up in our lives, that we're not going to have new things to deal with, but when we actually clean the slate behind us, when everything that we've been through, we actually have it processed, dealt with, truly healed, we're centered in ourselves, in a real solid connection with our soul, it actually doesn't matter what comes forward at us now. We have what we need to deal with. And a big part of that is learning these teachings and tools of the tradition, these Bwiti teachings. I have to save most of them for if you choose to come do the work, but I'd like to share one of my most, I'd say one of my favorite teachings. It's simple. All these teachings are very simple. There's a lot to chew on though. And it says, everything is nothing until you make it something. We can look at this in a few ways. Everything is nothing means that it's all a blank slate. We get to create what we choose, what we want, what we direct our energy towards. Until we really make it something. Or, everything is nothing. If bad things are happening to us, things are rough, the road is hard, we can choose to let it be nothing. To say, you know what, no, I got this. I'm not going to sweat the small stuff, if it's small stuff. I got this. I've got me. I've got what it takes because I'm still alive. And I'm strong. All of this is a beautiful foundation that all comes back to what all these medicines, all these traditions, it's what I love is they're all saying really the same thing, and to encapsulate it all is we have to learn how to love ourselves. That's what all these traditions have in common. What I love so very much is that it's really the most important thing that we're all here to do is really learn how to love us, because we're the only person we get to be on this earth. No matter how hard we might try, we can't be anybody else, and nobody will ever get to be us. You're the only you that has ever lived. Nobody will ever be you again. Nobody has ever been you. Just you. We get to make that really something special if we choose. Whatever we want it to be, we get to be. I am forever grateful to this medicine for really helping me to understand that and to see that. I struggled for a long time. My life has taken me in some very unusual places. But it was in coming to the Iboga medicine to see this efficiency at which people can heal working with this medicine that re-inspired me, that reignited my passion for life. And it is why I'm doing what I do now. Because I've seen what's possible for people. I've seen people who are so desperate, deeply depressed, ready to have government-assisted euthanasia, come to work with this medicine and leave with a smile on their face and say, no, I'm ready to live. People where nothing else has worked on this planet, and I mean nothing else, come and they say, you know what, I'm good, I'm ready. I'm ready to go live. Chronic pain, chronic illness, autoimmune diseases. I've watched lupus get healed in a week. I've watched sight get returned to the blind that was developing from multiple sclerosis. The sky's the limit. It's certainly no miracle cure. It's certainly no golden cap on the pyramid, and I will say that it's not for everybody. I want to make that abundantly clear. It's amazing, and I love it, and I want to share it with as many people as possible, but you have to know that it's right for you. I do want to take some time to actually open the floor for any questions, because this is one of the medicines that a lot of people haven't heard so much about. People don't know so much. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask about the tradition, about medicine? Sure, Beth.
How long does it usually last when you do one of these adventures? Or, I don't know, I don't want to call it a trip based on what you're saying.
Sure. So a journey with the Iboga medicine is really different person to person. Everybody's experience is unique. What we typically see is feeling the effects of the medicine for 24 hours, possibly a little bit longer. It's a very controlled environment that you take the Iboga in, where the first overnight portion. We start the ceremonies in the evening, and overnight with the medicine, you are in our temple space, laid down with the group. We have the traditional music playing until the sun rises. This is when the real meat of the journey happens, is in the nighttime. When the sun rises, we bring people back to their rooms, and we call it the processing day. The medicine is still very much active and alive and even working, but starting to share different insights and starting to help you make sense of what happened in the nighttime. And eventually, on that day, people will get some sleep. But even after some sleep, you're still feeling the effects of the medicine, not nearly as strongly on that following day and the days that follow, but it does stay with you. And one of the things that I really love about this medicine is that you don't walk away from the retreat and the medicine is just done. You feel it, it's gone, you're on your own, good luck. The spirit of the Iboga medicine stays with us for 6 months following the ceremony to help us to forge new pathways in our life, to create a new way for us to live. And it's there as a guide and a tool for us to talk with, to say, hey, I'm butting up against some things that I'm struggling with. I need some help. You know, what have you got for me, buddy? And the spirit of medicine is there to say, you know what? Why don't you try things a little different? What about if you do things this way? Does anybody else have anything? Sure, in the back.
What's the maximum group size?
In my retreats,
Journey.
sure, 4 to 5 people. Yeah, they're very small, intimate groups. The nature of the work is a lot more involved. My retreats that I'm running, the program that I'm trained in by my teacher, they're 7 days long. And in order to make sure that everybody really has the counseling support that they need through the week, because typically people do need a lot of support through this medicine because they're unpacking sometimes lifetimes worth of trauma over the course of a few days, we need to make sure that everybody has the available support for that process. Is there another? Sure.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, I'm very interested in if there are any stories or folklore about how the tribe came across the medicine. Was it brought by a star ancestor, or was there an ancient shaman that discovered it, or something like that?
Sure. I typically say this, but I'll give you guys a little treat tonight and share that story. So, a very long time ago, in the jungle in Gabon, the Bobongo people, the Pygmies, lived in their villages prior to discovering the medicine. They'd gather around their fires at night with their communities to share, to talk, to learn from each other, but also to ask questions. The jungle there is so incredibly abundant. They have literally everything they need. Food, water, shelter. The jungle gives them everything. It's really one of the most abundant places I've ever seen on this earth. So some time ago, they started to ask questions like, where did all of this come from? Who can we thank for all of this? Because we've got it all. Our life is easy. This is amazing. So they started to send people out into the jungle to look in the treetops, to look under the water, to say, maybe it came from in here. Maybe it came from the rain that falls because it makes everything grow. And this went on for a very long time where they'd come with ideas, but they knew deep down there was something missing in all their theories. They knew they were just theories. Until one day, in one of the Bobongo villages, there was a hunter. And hunting for the Bwiti, because the jungle is so abundant, this means setting traps. They go out to the jungle and they'll set maybe 100, 200 little traps. And that's their day of hunting, is they get to go check their traps and see what they caught. And on this particular day, this young hunter was walking through the jungle, checking trap after trap after trap, and didn't find anything. He was starting to get a little discouraged because he was hungry. He knew his wife was hungry. Until he got to the very last trap. And sure enough, there was a little porcupine. He was very excited. Then he had a good dinner. So he picked up his porcupine and decided to head back home. He got back to his home and he asked his wife if she would prepare their porcupine dinner. He was very tired from walking through the jungle all day, so he decided he was going to take a nap. And he lay down and he fell asleep. She had prepared their meal and tried to wake him, but he was fast asleep. So to not waste a good meal, she decided that she was going to eat her dinner. And she started to eat, and she finished, and started to clean up. And a little while after she started cleaning, she started to feel a little funny. A little dizzy, a little warm. It was very unusual for her. But she kept going, she kept cleaning, until eventually it got so strong that she had to sit on the ground. She didn't know what was going on. Their women are so incredibly strong there. So she said, you know what? If this is death, okay, I'm ready, but anything else, I got this. Bring it on. And as everything started to get stronger, she started to have a vision. She started to see her village in front of her. All the people she knew, people she didn't know, people who had died, people talking in secret, things that she could have never seen in her waking life. She saw this all night long until the sun came up. And finally, when the sun did come up, her husband woke up and she rushed to tell him. She said, I have to tell you this. You'll never believe what happened to me last night. And she was right, he didn't believe her. He said, you're no shaman. You're no medicine woman. You don't have visions. What are you talking about? And she said, no, I know what I experienced last night. I know that it was real. So she went to the wisest person in their village, their chief, and she shared her story with him. And he believed her. He said, okay, well, did you drink anything last night? Smoke anything? Like, what did you do? And she said, no, I just had dinner. My husband caught a porcupine. And he said, well, we need to investigate. So they grabbed the husband, and the chief said, take me to the trap where you caught the porcupine. I need to see this. So they walked out into the jungle, went over to that very last trap, and as they were looking around, they noticed some roots that were exposed on the ground that looked like they had been chewed on. And the chief said, well, maybe that porcupine ate some of these roots down here that were chewed on, and that caused you to feel this, to have this experience. So let's collect some and bring them back to the village. And they did. They went back to the village, and you think the chief was the next strongest, bravest person to eat them? He went to his wife and said, honey, you gotta eat this. You gotta try this out for me. We need more data. And she said, you're crazy. No, I'm not going to do that. I heard her story. That sounded wild. I'm not ready for that. But eventually, after some convincing, she said yes. It's really beautiful. 2 women were the first people to eat the Iboga, and have the experience of the Iboga. But this woman, the chief's wife, ate some of the roots and started to have her own experience, very similar to the first woman. Eventually, she started to have a vision as well, except hers was different. A tree came out of the ground in front of her and said, hello. And she jumped. She said, whoa! And the tree said, no, please, don't be afraid. My name is Iboga. I'm a messenger. I've been watching your people since the very beginning, asking all these questions. Where you come from, who you are, where all of this comes from. And if you want to know who you are, eat me, and I will show you. If you're sick, eat me and I will heal you. If you have any questions about this life, eat me and I'll show you the truth. And the medicine then instructed her that all the people in the village needed to take their turn initiating with the Iboga, to eat this medicine, have this experience, so that they would grow a strong, beautiful, and healthy society, to create the Bwiti, to teach them the teachings, their traditional music. And these ancient practices are still practiced today in the same way. They have never deviated. The lineage that I practice, Bwiti Misoko, has not deviated from the original. It's the same exact practices we initiate in the jungle, the same way that the medicine taught them to initiate thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And we still share the tradition and the teachings breath to breath in the same way, like some of the Amazonian traditions. It was purely oral. Nothing is written. Everything that we learn is shared breath to breath, from my breath to yours. And we're very blessed because the medicine guided the Lobongo to hide the medicine for a very long time as the French and the groups were coming in to colonize Gabon. And it hasn't been until the last, say, 50 years or so that the medicine instructed them that it was time to share. that it saw that the world was hurting, that we needed help out here in this crazy Western world. And now we get to experience the amazing beauty of the Iboga medicine and the Bwiti tradition.
How would someone know what the medicines do?
You can schedule a time to talk with me and we can talk about it. I have a very thorough screening process that is based on medical history, medications, things like that. Fortunately, there are very few contraindications with Iboga. It's very safe. There are a few small things that we're looking for based on health or medication or drug use, certain situations. I personally don't handle addiction detox. That is an entirely different line of work with the Iboga that you might have heard about. If that is something you're struggling with, or you know somebody who's struggling with, I can point you in the right direction towards people who are trained in using the Iboga medicine correctly for this process. That's a little bit more medical. But the beautiful thing about Iboga and Bwiti is that it's for everybody. When you go to the village in Gabon, they say, welcome home. Because it's not just theirs, it's for all of us. You don't have to be born in Africa to do this work, to be Bwiti, to be a student of life. There are very few people who aren't good candidates for it, but it's an opportunity for us to talk. I have some business cards in the back or on me, and feel free to get my contact information while I'm here, and we can talk more about it. Thank you all very much.
Another round of applause. It was also a huge help with the decriminalization back in 2021. So we're going to take like a 5 to 10 minute break to go use the restroom, get some snacking, the latest neuroscience findings about how entheogenic psychedelics like psilocybin, DMT, ayahuasca, and Iboga work to help heal from depression, anxiety, and PTSD. His emphasis will be on the psychological, emotional, and spiritual effects of these psychedelics. Also, he will discuss the importance of harm avoidance and the integration of the journey after the experience. So welcome, Dr. G.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It's a pleasure being here with like-minded souls. It's very different from lecturing at Stanford or whatever, where there's hostility from the psychopharmacological community there. Yeah, all other kinds of things. When I was preparing this talk today, I called up my son, who lives in San Francisco, teaches math at the high school, and asked him, if you were in the audience, what would you like to hear about? And he said, Dad, could you talk about the stoned ape hypothesis, McKenna, that humans evolved from their interactions with magic mushrooms and developed cognition, the arts, and religion. That long period of 100,000 years or so of coevolution. I said, I'll give it a try, but after hearing David's splendid talk, I decided I'd be talking about the stone bug hypothesis from mushrooms, because clearly, the mushrooms have been around, and as Marissa and Taylor have talked about, we are one community, one ecosystem of mushrooms, plants, animals, and spirits, other entities and spirits. And we're kind of co-evolving through this long journey through space and time. So, I'm going to be talking about psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy today, focusing mostly on psilocybin, which there's the most information that's been done in neuroscience on psilocybin, and personally I'm most familiar with psilocybin in contrast to some of the other entheogens. We've heard great talks from Marissa and Taylor on ayahuasca and Iboga, and particularly the spiritual aspects of these medicines. And I will touch on that as well, but mostly focus on psilocybin. And some key points, which I think most of you know, or many of you know, for psychedelic therapy. Timothy Leary, back in the 60s, when he was doing his research at Harvard before he got expelled from the university, kind of discovered, he did a lot of work on psilocybin and discovered that set and setting, set being the mental state, personality factors, individual differences that you bring to a psilocybin experience is paramount. Understanding and healing through partaking of psilocybin. And setting, is equally important, Is it a calm, loving place? Is it hostile? Are you removed from ordinary reality? It was interesting, both Marissa and Taylor talked about the setting, the setting of indigenous use of these entheogens. It's a communal setting, and the whole culture is geared around making these experiences comfortable. In terms of that, there's kind of three phases to psychedelic psychotherapy. There's the preparation phase, what happens before you enter the state, the journey itself, and then the most critical, I think, phase is the integration afterwards. That lasts days, weeks, years, in which you assimilate the material that comes out during your journey. It's akin to the rite of passage. Like Vendetta anthropologist talked about. You have a preparation for initiation, rites of passage. You have the preparation. You have the actual liminal state where you're betwixt and between. You're in between states, in between worlds, and then the integrations when you come out. In terms of the rite of passage, and you become a new person, a new psyche, as it were. Another important issue in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy is the idea of harm reduction. That's so critical and oftentimes glossed over in the research, because research protocols are, very specific, detailed, logical. Reports don't really talk about, some of the issues that can arise during the journey. I mean, they'll talk about dropouts or adverse reactions, but that's basically it. But it's very, very, very important, critically important, to realize that all these psychedelics, psilocybin, ayahuasca, DMT, iboga, may, in individuals, same individual at different times, they all evoke this feeling of heaven and hell, of pure ecstasy alternating with agony, light and shadow. We talk about the shadow work that wells up when you're doing the journey and integrating the material that comes to the foreground. Angels and demons, if they're entities that one experiences, if one calls them that, they're like heavenly, positive, radiant beings, angels, and then the sort of demons, scary stuff that can often arise. Another important issue is this radical shift in self-identity. Marissa so eloquently talked about her shift in identity through ayahuasca ceremonies. You come out as a new person. That's just like a rite of passage. You're a different person. You may slow off the old kind of patterns of behaviors. You may change your career. You may develop new hobbies, new habits. A lot of these will shift. You may identify with nature. your gender identity may shift. A lot of things can happen during these experiences. And the final thing that's important, in terms of the clinical work, is that the psychedelic entheogens can be helpful, may be helpful, in several psychological, psychiatric conditions. Treatment-resistant depression, those are individuals who've been on all these SSRIs and other kinds of medications and just are not adequately responding. So the FDA has actually allowed studies of psilocybin for breakthrough therapy for treatment-resistant depression. So many people who are depressed on Zoloft for years and years and years, and feel a little better, but their emotions are a little blunted. Just things aren't quite the way one would want them to be. The earliest studies by Johns Hopkins, by Roland Griffiths, showed that cancer patients facing potential death, end-of-life issues, one psilocybin journey can radically change their approach and their fear of death, anxiety around passing. So that's really, really important, because we're all going to die at some point, and it's very, that could be beneficial to each of us. Obsessive compulsive disorder is an interesting one. Recent studies showed that people who have obsessions and compulsions, like checking doors when you leave, or make sure the stove is off, contamination fears, like being yucked out by dirt and feeling the need to clean, hoarding, not being able to throw things away. That seems to be helped by psilocybin. And this recent study that was really interesting showed that people with OCD, under the influence of psilocybin, tended not to ever drop out of the studies, didn't have adverse effects. So it seems like it's tailor-made for these kind of obsessive thoughts that can go through your mind, obsessive negative thinking. And we'll delve in more detail later around that. Substance abuse, psilocybin, some early studies have shown that it's helpful for alcoholism. Taylor mentioned Iboga. That's really a hot topic in psychiatry for treating addiction. Other things that psilocybin might be helpful for are eating disorders, anorexia nervosa, which is this idea that, you look in the mirror and you feel like you're overweight and you restrict and compulsively lose weight, and it becomes, it's akin to obsessive compulsiveness, except in the realm of body image, and that would be helped by psilocybin. And then, of course, post-traumatic stress disorder. There haven't been a lot, ironically, there haven't been a lot of published studies on PTSD and entheogens. Most of it has been done through MDMA, through MAPS, which seems to be very helpful in a couple of therapy for treating post-traumatic stress disorder. All right. So we're going to go through the stages. Preparation before you actually journey. Set your intention. Critical. What do you want to get out of the experience? Do you want to face early traumatic memories? Do you want to cultivate a relationship with the divine? Do you want to maybe cut the bonds to dysfunctional relationships and understand them better? But it's really important before you actually do consume the mushrooms or the ayahuasca is set an intention. As I mentioned before, having a calming setting is real critical. Music, candles, breath work, breathing, slowing your breath. Oftentimes people feel more comfortable, like with psilocybin, in nature, being out in the woods, by the beach, in a cave, rather than at home. So know what setting is best for you individually before you undertake, a journey. And concomitant with that is just eliminate all these distractions. Cut those cell phones off. Don't let like in a movie or in the symphony. Don't have bills around. Don't make sure it's not a work day or something. It's your boy, Bill Health sick day. So that's important to eliminate distractions coupled with this calming setting. And then the harm reduction, real critical, not often discussed, but very, very significant. That you have to be careful for example, if you have a history of psychosis, manic psychosis, or schizophrenia. It's not that these drugs particularly cause psychosis, but they may worsen. I mean, if you're communicating with entities and so on, it may be interpreted through a psychotic lens if it happens to you. So actually, Pamela and I were talking earlier, it may be if you do have some psychological issues that are contraindicated initially for the journey, you may start microdosing very, very low doses and kind of work your way out to see if you can tolerate that. Another aspect of harm reduction is to have a guide present and or available. That's real critical. Having a person who's been through the experience, a person who understands what you're doing, a person who isn't freaked out as you start pacing, running around, jumping up, purging, someone who's familiar with the process. Either present with you or available by phone or Zoom, some way of contacting that person. The third thing is if you're on psych meds, not so much with psilocybin doesn't seem to affect it, other than it may reduce the effectiveness of the journey of psilocybin. If you're on psych meds like particularly selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, and you do ayahuasca, the ayahuasca experience has also, the ayahuasca by itself has harmaline in it, harmaline, which break down would prevent the breakdown of the DMT. But if you add that to an SSRI, you could get way too much serotonin and develop a side effect called serotonin syndrome. Changes in body temperature, sometimes even seizures. So you've got to be real careful with ayahuasca and SSRIs. All right, talking about preparation. Now, journeying. Probably, I'm going to go out on a limb with this. I think the journey itself, from the psychiatric point of view, may be the least significant aspect of the process. From a spiritual point of view, it is super significant, as we've heard from Marissa and Taylor. But a lot of the healing is done after the journey and integration, psychological healing. The journey itself, you all should recognize that two things can happen. And they're called in the jargon of psychedelic research, you can enter a state of anxious ego dissolution. So, if people experience, let's say, psilocybin, you go, whoa, I don't know who I am, or where I am, or when it is, what time it is. I lose track of location, space, and time, and sense of self. And you get anxious, you freak out. Oh my God, I'm going to die. It's horrible. But an aspect of the mystical state elicited by psilocybin is this correlate of oceanic boundlessness. That's a Freudian term that you feel like you're one with the universe. It's kind of, just sailing in the ocean. You're just a molecule in a deep blue sea. Right? You have that sense, that mystical union with everything, particularly with nature. And you also have, as I said earlier, these heaven and hell aspects to the experience. So the journeys are multi-levels. You have, on a cosmic spiritual level, you can feel a connection to beings and entities, particularly with ayahuasca. I mentioned the sense of mystical union with nature, a holy one, goddess. That's a fascinating aspect of the journey because it's uncommon without these medications. I mean, mystics throughout the ages have cultivated that, lived in caves and, seeking, union with divine, with God. But here you can, kind of short circuit that and immediately, within half an hour, start to feel this connection with the divine, the source energy, with, nature. Third thing is frequently, and this is cultivated in some of the therapies, there's a reemergence of traumatic memories that are hard to make sense of sometimes, particularly if they're pre-verbal. Early traumas do come up, and it's difficult because you don't necessarily have words to describe the events. You don't have a narrative sequence of events that are related to the trauma because it may have happened before age 5 or so, where it's hard to encode memories. But you still feel it. You have a somatic memory of the trauma that can well up, under the influence of psilocybin. And the fourth thing about the journey is this amplification of the physical, somatic, body, visceral, like your heart, your guts, and so on. You become aware, hyper-aware, acutely aware of your perceptions, of your emotions, of your thoughts. Everything gets amplified. And we'll get into it a little later about how that happens. What we know is that, and this is Robin Carhart Harris, what we know is studying the brain through functional MRI studies under the influence of psilocybin or DMT or LSD too, is that there are novel regions of the mind that are explored, that are opened up under the influence of psilocybin, for instance. The way I envision it is like, let's say we're living here in Eureka, and we're just, our daily work is here in Eureka, but then all of a sudden we're in this journey and with a tree or a plant. But the thing about the mushroom world that's so amazing is this symbiotic relationship with, these are the mycelia, and this is, I think, a little pine tree sprout. The relationship between mycelia and the roots and an exchange of minerals and nutrition that's mutual. And you can actually have evidence that, a dearth of certain nutrients here can be communicated to neighboring, little pine sprouts through the mycelium. It's like a network. It's a metaphor for our interconnectedness, I believe, with all of nature. And now, just a few, I'm going to gloss over these technical slides. As David mentioned, there's tryptophan becomes tryptamines, and there are these various enzymes that are found in psilocybin mushrooms that catalyze the creation of different tryptamines, norvaocystin, vaocystin, psilocybin, and then psilocin, the actual product in our bodies once we, let's say, drink psilocybin that gets converted to psilocin, which is active in our brains. And then, recently, about 2020, one of the enzymes also converts it, polymerizes it, makes polymers, kind of like plastic, into the bluing reaction in psilocybin mushrooms. And actually, the bluing color is very key. I mean, that's one way of telling the difference between psilocybin mushroom and, let's say, a poisonous galerina mushroom. I mean, they don't turn blue. They don't have, psilocybin polymers in it. When they're scratched or disturbed or exposed to oxygen. So that's critical for figuring out which of these mushrooms may contain psilocybin. If you don't have what they call HPLC equipment, all this other stuff to test for it. And these are the breakdown products of harmine, these are the IBL inhibitors, harmine, that slow down the break up of many of these tryptamine medicines. All right, technical side, but it's beautiful, but it may not seem beautiful to everybody, but what we know, and this answers my son Kai's kind of question, the stone bugs theory. All these, philosophy are resins, cubensis, cyanescens, maxicana, which David talked about, cervica. They all have, in this short piece of DNA, some of the same enzymes, DNA to synthesize these protein enzymes to create psilocybin. And the question is, what's going on? Why is psilocybin actually found in these mushrooms? And this kind of busy slide shows that this one right here is Psilocybin sinensis, one that grows in the dunes, past Samoa. And then there's Paniolus sinensis, which is also hallucinogenic, very far apart on the tree of mushrooms. Mushrooms have a tree just like humans and primates and dogs and cats and mammals are part of the tree. And another one is a little further, it's a little closer. Genopolis also has the same sequence of 4 or 5 coding regions. So what people think is that, all these mushrooms that have this psilocybin coding sequence, they grow like in dung or on chips, and that millions of years ago, maybe another mushroom that grows on dung saw a cubensis or whatever, some psilocybin mushroom, and they exchange DNA because somehow it promotes the survival of the mushroom. And so it jumps species. It'd be as if you find a human DNA in a rabbit or something, right? That's sort of naturally occurring. It's called horizontal gene transfer. And it has some functional significance because these mushrooms have persisted, they've evolved, and they retain their capacity to make psilocybin. It's really fascinating. I mean, maybe it does make the bugs, trip out, and then they go around picking up spores and spreading them around. Maybe that's it. We don't know, but it's just really fascinating that you find, these same, the same segments of DNA in all these divergent species of mushrooms. All right, now I'm going to give you a simplified model, which I call the NEA model of psilocybin's effect. NEA standing in for neuroplasticity, E for extinction of fear, and A for enhanced awareness. So neuroplasticity, really key, as we've heard discussed earlier here. Psilocybin, DMT, ibogaine, all increase neuroplasticity, enhance the growth of new neurons, synapses, and dendrites. I'll show you a picture of what those look like in a sec. In areas of the brain that are important for regulating emotions and storing memories. So, hippocampus, medial prefrontal cortex. What happens is that when you're stressed or depressed or traumatized, in humans, we realize that there's a loss of cells, a loss of tissue in these key regions of the brain, hippocampus and frontal cortex. And these entheogens restore, create new neurons, create new little branches, dendrites, that restore the function of these areas. I'm going to show you a model of areas. This is your brain on shrooms. So, right, this area is the temporal lobe, the middle part of the temporal lobe where the hippocampus is, and the amygdala is on the tip of that. And then the frontal cortex, this is the medial part of the frontal cortex. That regulates emotions. And this part, the lateral part, regulates thinking, attention, cognition. So what we're talking about is this emotional part of the brain that gets disrupted, disturbed through depression, stress, and trauma. And that you get a restoration and a creation of new neurons in those chemicals. What's important to note is that it's not just, there's neuroplasticity. A lot of things cause neuroplasticity. But, for example, in these studies we did at Johns Hopkins recently, cocaine can cause neuroplasticity in certain areas of the brain, but they induce neurons in the kind of addictive regions of the brain. If you crave, right? So you learn to crave, right? Or you never craved before. So, psilocybin, these things do not do that, and cocaine does not cause neuroplasticity in these areas of the brain that are important for the effectiveness of our entheogens. So that's neuroplasticity. Extinction, the E part of NEA. There's an area of the brain called the amygdala. There's the model of it, right there, right at the tip of where the hippocampus is, that codes for fear, emotions in general, but specifically for fear, negative emotions, fear, disgust, to some extent anger, And in PTSD, it becomes hyper activated. We know that from some functional MRI studies. And let's say you've been traumatized, wartime, sexual assault, childhood abuse. These memories are there, and things trigger it as an aspect of PTSD. Just exposure to, certain signals in the environment that remind you of, the original trauma, even if it's unconscious. And the way to get healed from that is a process called extinction. Now, extinction doesn't mean that these fear responses disappear. No, not at all. What it means is that you create new memories, new images that get evoked when you're in the fearful situation. New stuff comes up, like maybe this image of Cottage Cove comes up instead of the cop stopping you at a light, right? Just because a person of color. It's extinction process is the creation of new networks that dampen down the amygdala's fear response in the moment. And the entheogens are very good at creating extinction. This is, I talked about the medial side, the middle side of the brain. This is the ventral prefrontal cortex down in there, and then the cingulate, and then the back part, the cingulate. This area of the brain is active. It's called the kind of resting state, default mode network. Is active when we're not doing any tasks, when we're not, cutting wood with a saw to make the box. Just sitting there and you're having these thoughts, loopy thoughts going through your mind. What the hell? Why did I do that? Or am I going to be able to pay my bills in a month? I'm a horrible person. I feel suicidal. I can't get that out of my mind. Or this desk is contaminated. I can't get near that. These are sort of thoughts that occur when we're not doing a task that are accentuated in states of depression, PTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, that not only are reduced by psilocybin, DMT, LSD, and Iboga, but also, and this is what's beautiful about the entheogens, is that the activity of this default mode network here is kind of reduced, but the interconnections of it and any other aspect of the brain with other areas of the brain is enhanced. That's the amplification. That's, being in Eureka and also in College Cove and Hoop at the same time. It's kind of amazing how that works. And it works through this serotonin 2A receptor. We know that are activated by psilocybin, Iboga, and DMT. I said I'd show you a picture of the neuron. There it is. And signals come in, action potential, that's electrical discharge, starts here, goes through this area, the axon, and then reaches the synapses, and then it communicates with another neuron. That's how learning and memory take place, through the synapses that can get enhanced, create new synapses and new dendrites, say the hippocampus, by psilocybin or DMT. So that's kind of the mechanism, just a little cartoon picture of how that works. And then the nice image from Robin Carhart Harris's early work on psilocybin, where he looked at functional MRI of the brain. And these areas in different colors are like different areas of the brain. And these lines are how well do they communicate. You can do this mathematically, with fMRI algorithms. And resting state A, you get a lot of local kind of communication. There's light blue, there's deep wine red, blue green. And you get some scattered crosstalk, but very little. Under psilocybin, these are real studies, these are real data that's been made into this image. You get huge interactions in areas of the brain that never communicate, like from there to there. And the thickness of this is the intensity of communication. So under the influence of psilocybin, you're communicating with everything. You're going to all the valleys, right? At the same time. And that's, I think, an aspect of the mystical experience that we, can share when we are in one of our journeys. So, finally, we'll talk briefly about clinical studies. I mentioned that Roland Griffiths and Johns Hopkins, some of the early studies about a decade ago about how psilocybin uses essential death anxiety in cancer patients, and other folks, researchers have shown that major depression may be relieved for up to a year under psilocybin treatment. And that prompted the FDA to give a breakthrough designation for MDD, major depressive disorder, psilocybin, and major depressive disorder, and TRD, treatment-resistant depression. Because the results were so impressive that we said, oh, okay, let's, it looks like it might be better than our SSRIs, SNRIs, all that other stuff. And so let's do some studies. So a couple of companies, Compass, Simon, have marketed this and, are putting in millions of dollars for synthetic psilocybin to be administered to folks. Not very spiritual, I would say, but profitable, right? For psilocybin, depression, and major depression, treatment depression. And then I said that psilocybin may be helpful for OCD, anorexia nervosa, eating disorder, and alcoholism. And there's very little on microdosing, which I think is the way of the future. But there's a recent naturalistic study that I think Paul Stamos was one of the authors on it, where they looked at people who signed up online to a group of whom do psilocybin, microdosing, another don't do that. And they followed them a month. They started off baseline, same level of anxiety, depression, and so on. And they found that after 1 month, those individuals who microdosed had a reduction in anxiety, depression, and obsessive compulsive symptoms, just literally after a month from signing up to the study. So that's interesting. We need to do a lot more studies on microdosing. It is such a novel thing, and I think it is the way of the future. So finally, concluding, I mentioned that we talked about psilocybin, ayahuasca, DMT, ibogaine, points of setting, the rite of passage, preparation, journey, integration. Harm reduction is critical. I would add one of the issues in terms of harm reduction is you may not go into hell, but you may go into heaven if you're divine or God or something, and you can boss everyone around and you can start your own whatever clinic or something. That's the other end of caution and harm reduction. Is it radically structuring of self-identity and our relationship to nature? mentioned that conditions may be treated before, and then microdosing studies is the next wave of research. So with that, I thank you. Any questions?
Where can I get that sweatshirt?
Oh, this one, right, through the Humboldt Bay Mycological Society. They sell these sweatshirts and stuff, so good. Yes?
There's N, E, and A, and I don't remember what the A was.
Awareness, expanded awareness. You know, having your mind travel through the valleys and, you know, our imagination, you know, or maybe the spiritual realm, maybe higher dimensions of spiritual connection. But there's an expansion of awareness, and that's reflected in how the brain is hyper-connected to all the different regions that were never connected before. Yes?
I was wondering, are we at a point where we can talk openly about therapists doing psychedelic assisted therapy in Humboldt County?
Well, we can talk about it, but the issue is licensure, right? You know, I'm retired. I'm retired psychiatrist, retired a year and a half ago, so I can pretty much talk openly about stuff. But there are issues about, you know, being investigated by boards, that kind of stuff, because it's not legal in California, so it'd be California boards, not yet. Certainly, you know, nationally, it's, you know, illegal. So it's difficult, but you can always work in conjunction with a guide, with you know, Danielle, Marissa, or Taylor. You know, just through a referral network. You know, you can refer your clients to someone who's doing it, who's not at risk of losing, you know, a particular license. Anything else? Yeah.
Can you put your first slide up again so we can see how to contact you?
Oh, well, I didn't have my contact information, but
It's retired.
I'm retired. I know. Yeah, I know. Let's see. Well, the first slide had my degrees and stuff, you know. But Danielle and Marissa both know how to contact me and everything. That'd probably be the easiest way to do that. Anything else? Well, yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
Like, you know, if you take psilocybin or acid, you have this, you know, trip, you
Yeah.
know, and then, like, okay, but then I've never microdosed. I've had plenty of trips.
Right.
But I mean, how would you compare the two? And is the microdosing like giving you that little bit of a little bump of euphoria every day, or?
No, I would say, and I'm plugging microdosing because I think it's so helpful. But you don't really feel much, but it's, I think I said earlier that it's like mindfulness. It's like you can do kind of mindful meditation without the effort and the struggle that you might, you know, if you take a class in mindfulness and so on. I mean, it's just sort of natural. You just observe and, you know, emotions and perceptions and so on. And it's enhanced a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's great. Microdosing with, you know, breath work, microdosing with yoga, microdosing with sound healing. You know, they're great combos that you know, can be very helpful, in my opinion.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is the lovely Jen Cruz. Jen is a holistic health coach specializing in mental health, trauma, and addiction recovery. She is certified as a functional nutritionist, health coach, psychedelic integration coach, Kundalini yoga teacher, and an integrative somatic therapy coach. Jen helps guide people with nutrition and lifestyle medicine through holistic integration processes to heal from chronic health conditions and to reach their full potential locally here and in Humboldt County and globally online through one-on-one work, group coaching programs, professional training, and public speaking. Jen is passionate about the responsible use of psychedelics and their ability to positively change people's lives. So welcome me.
And I know it's been a long night, so I'm gonna not keep too much of your time. But I'm Jen, and the topic that I wanted to bring in tonight was community building, because I really wanted to verify like what we're doing here with Decriminalize Nature and why. And I've had such a joy to be on the team with Danielle since we started back in Arcata, and I really started visioning this happening here like 9 years ago after originally Iboga changed my own life. And so, yeah, I do all the work. I kind of like live what that slideshow is talking about with my clients. I've done it for myself first, and so that's why I got into the work that I do. But I've really been sitting with the medicines for like over 25 years. I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. My first job was working for Ken Kesey at his 5-day-long LSD parties. Jerry Garcia played in my high school, and pretty much I was in an MK Ultra experiment like most of my youth, which then ended me up in Humboldt County. And you know, so it's like that. So it's like the second wave we're calling that. The first wave was like the first research wave, then the 60s and 70s, and now we're in what's called the third wave because it's a reemergence of the therapeutic use. So one thing I'd like to clarify from personal lived experience, because one of the things we get is like, you know, oh, I used to do all this LSD and stuff, I've already done it, you haven't. I took a 10-year break because I'm also in long-term recovery. I'm a person who was in addiction for 17 years. I come from a family of generational trauma, so it's all the stuff that the studies talk about, like that's been my experience, military, Irish, like the whole thing, all the way back to the Vikings on my Scandinavian side, so it like was deep, and I'm the first person in my family to get sober. And I'll be 13 years drug and alcohol free at the beginning of January. And then I came to the plant medicines after 5 years of continuous sobriety because I still, even though I'd done all the things traditional, even though I found yoga to be helpful, I spent over a year in India, got 1,000 hours of trainings there, all over the place, nutrition helped, but there was still something like Taylor was talking about. And there's still that something for so many people. And so like, I'm so glad everybody's here tonight that's interested, that's part of the service community. But I'm mostly like excited and really happy that if you're here because you are loved one is struggling or if you've been labeled as treatment resistant, because that's like a bullshit label. I'm just gonna tell you, just because somebody's pill doesn't work on you does not mean that you are broken. It means that their treatment is limited and they don't know what's wrong with you. And so what I found through this work, you know, I finally came to Iboga actually, which was different than Iboga, 5 years into my recovery. And after my Iboga flood, it was like the first time I'd ever felt comfortable in my own body since I was born. And I realized I was born in stress response, trauma response, because my mother was under stress when she was pregnant. And so that's a whole nother talk. But, you know, like, I didn't get that experience when I was like at Ken Kesey's LSD parties. Like I had to be in a set and setting, like was just being talked about, and I had to take the right kind of medicine. Now, like that being all said, once you get into that, all of this disorders, all of the treatments, it's all nervous system dysregulation, right? And so when we stepped into this container with a new wave of psychedelics, we're understanding that these are all medicines of the nervous system, and they work differently, but they work really well where nothing else does. What everybody's missing, now I've been working out in the field in really bigger scenes. I've had like the opportunity and the privilege to be like on the pilot project for the first Navy SEAL Team 6 crew, and that was like amazing because those guys have been in the Mayo Clinic, like the best in the world, and nothing could happen for them. They couldn't make any improvement. one Iboga session, they're like better, you know, like miraculously better. I was miraculously better. I've just seen so much, and what I've seen now, I was integrating at a top integration coach training program company, biggest coach company out there. I've been working with like executives and high profile people because unfortunately, up until recently, that's the demographic that could afford this stuff. And 90% of my clients were white males. The rest of them were like white women and then maybe like a little sprinkle here and there, but that was it. And it made me frustrated because it's like everybody deserves this, right? And Humboldt was like part of my healing journey. It's not just the medicine, it's the container. There's a bigger setting. So I'd get these like, you know, affluent people and, you know, going to all these fancy clinics and all these retreat centers. And then they come home and they crash because guess what? All that stuff for integration, the nature, the yoga, the nutrition, the community of people where you can actually have meaningful conversations with. Because out there in like mainstream America, they go home, you can't talk about like what happened at your retreat because people are gonna think you're nuts. We have all of that right here. Like that was so quintessential in my own healing is that not only could I like have medicine work done and like there's people I can talk to, but there's the best food in the world, there's the best nature in the world, there's the clean air and the clean water. And it's not just the psychedelic providers, but it's like we have world-class like body healers here. We have like body workers and yoga teachers and like everything you can imagine is right here. And so like this community thing is so important as we network to understand the like potency of the gift of what we actually have here in this community. You know, last spring, I actually personally went through a case of psychedelic abuse at the hands of another male provider. He saw me working. Because I have such a deep understanding of addiction and psychedelics and all the things I'm talking about, he became convinced I had the cure for addiction, me and my team. I work around Iboga and I work around stuff. I was drugged, I was brainwashed, and then when I brought it out, I was gaslit and I uncovered a much larger circle of abuse from a man who treats billionaires that costs $40,000 to $1 million per package. And he is using it on people, many people, to manipulate them. And there's many people that know about it and they don't do anything. So the other gift that we have here is accountability and that you get to know who your providers are. None of these people know this stuff. It's all word of mouth. These are very wealthy people and they don't have access to what we have right here. And so they're never going to talk to each other. If somebody's doing really bad stuff in this community, we're going to know about it. And I'm telling you guys, I've been out in the bigger scene, and there are some really bad things going on because capitalism, the Western medical model, and psychedelics don't mix. They don't. I've been in the middle of it. It doesn't work. We saw what happened with cannabis here. It didn't work. And so tonight what I really wanted to just kind of express without, I can go for days, but like I've seen what's going on out there. There's some really good things going on out there, but there's also some really bad. And as this new emerging industry expands, it's going to get worse because it's human nature, and it's going to. I've already seen it attracting the same slimy entrepreneur narcissists that the cannabis industry attracted, that I'm sure some of us have been through. And it's a different worse because we're working with people's souls, and we're working with their psyche. And so what I've realized through all of this, well, because there's been a little bit like, well, decrim is supposed to be gift, gather, and share. And it is. And that's the protection that we can create here because we're not going to stop Big Pharma from coming in. We're not going to stop the fact that we are a capitalist society and that narcissists like to take on the role of shaman because it fulfills all of their needs, right? And it's not just men, it's women too. But what we have here is so important because that's going to continue to get worse, and we have something that we can create that's a safety bubble from all of that here. If somebody's going around here and doing bad things, we're going to hear about it, right? We're going to hear about it. You know, so yes, gift, gather, and share. I've showed up to volunteer. I share about the work I do. We share about the work we do so that you guys know who we are. And of course, anybody that's doing this work is gonna need to get paid. I'm not here to promote myself, but it's okay for people to also make money to hold the space. I did years and years and years on the recreational scene. I lived at 25 years in prison for growing mushrooms back in 2000 in Oregon, where it's now legal. And now, you know, there's so much that can come up with this work, like was talked about earlier. You need guidance and support through that. I'm using psychedelic medicines to heal from what I went through last spring. I have an integration coach. I am an integration coach because I know the value in that work. You know, I didn't have to leave to get the medicines this time that I needed because there's a beautiful Iboga provider who I sat. Thank you, Taylor. I highly recommend him. You know, there's a beautiful woman who comes through here and does somatic-based mushroom therapy that was like life-changing for me. And yeah, like you heal and you live life, but guess what? Sometimes life happens again. And I found for myself and most of my clients is that once we've been sensitized through trauma, that we are going to be more sensitized to it moving forward because it's our sacred stress response keeping us safe. So another beautiful thing about getting to work with the medicines in this community together is that we get to find out who's a good fit for us, for what, who are the team of healers that I want to have, and I can start to develop my personal practice of psychedelic use in between maybe, you know, energetically exchanging with somebody who's going to give me all of their skill set to sit for me. And I can learn how to microdose from like Danielle, but then I can microdose on my own after I learn how, and I can go out in the beautiful redwoods and do that, you know? And then I don't have to worry about, I saved up all my life savings and I'm going for this one big experience in Costa Rica, and if it doesn't work and I come home, then I'm fucked, because guess what? I'm just here and I live in a community that understands the value of this kind of therapy. And I don't ever have to worry about not having access to it because we have it here now. And so not only is it good for us in the community, but all of us in our lives today have somebody that's struggling with addiction, right? Somebody's suicidally depressed, somebody's got treatment-resistant anxiety, and they're going through the Rolodex and all of these things on Instagram, and it's like, well, which $8,000 retreat am I going to go to and get all of my trauma healed in 5 days, which is a red flag if anybody's advertising that. But it's like, oh, my relative lives in Humboldt County and I hear that they're decriminalized, you know? So like each one of us being here is like an advocate for our entire network of people, because, you know, PTSD is real, and all of the Western model, it doesn't work on these things because it doesn't recognize nervous system dysregulation, and you know, once you've been through a lot of shit, then all of a sudden you've got an incurable brain disease. One of the biggest things I do with people is like, well, why don't we write down everything you've been through in your life? It's really rare that there hasn't been anything. And then it's like, well, wouldn't you be something wrong with you if you were okay after all of this? And what have you done for that up until this point? Took a pill? You know, like, let's talk about how the nervous system works, how much nutrition it requires, how much rest, you know, what's our window of tolerance, like. So these are all the things that we can get together here and do, right? And so for me, like once I discovered all of this for myself, of course, it's become my life work, but I don't have to be afraid for the other shoe to drop ever again, because I know what to do now, you know? And now, because of all the hard work, I don't have to go anywhere. You know, I had to fly down to Mexico, I had to be all secretive about it. I had a 2-year-old kid, nobody's gonna judge me and shit. Now I just do it here, in my home. You know? So I just wanted to clarify too, like, if anybody's like, oh, you know, mushrooms grow outside, like why would you want like a coach or, you know, or you know, decriminalize, it's like, gift gathers, right? It's all supposed to be free. It's like, let's value the incredible resource that we have here, and everybody deserves to have an energetic exchange. Of course, the medicine's free. That protects us from big pharma coming in here and doing what the cannabis industry tried to do. Like, it didn't work. So I'm just saying, from being out on the battlefield, I just resigned from my company. I was a teacher at one of the top training companies in the whole industry, and after I saw what people are doing with abuse and power of money, of all kinds of unspeakable things, even children using it as guinea pigs, that kind of stuff, that I am now choosing to dedicate all of my energy to my local community, because I can't stop that from going on out here, but we can create something better here. So this is the part that we lost, and it's really colonization, you know, and it goes Rockefeller, colonizer, medical, but it goes all the way backwards from separating from us, from community, from nature, and, you know, it's just not, it hasn't worked, so we all have to keep coming back together again.
Thank you for your passion. You know, it just really brings it all together and has us, you know, feel it in our hearts.
It's pretty much what's up. All of it.
Alright, so thank you. Another round of applause for Well, awesome. That's it. Thank you all for maybe we could turn the lights back on and if you want to cruise around with the vendors again before heading out. And again, thanks.